I am dreaming tonight of a place that I love even more than I usually do. And although I know it's a long road back, this I promise you, I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. Please have snow.
All right, Dale, hang on 1 minute now while I do a little bit of resharing of screens so I can get you on screen with me. And there we are now. Dale, we are here.
Just so you know, I'm not wearing any pants.
Oh, no. No, you can't do that. Don't wear any pants. I mean, okay. No, yeah, wear pants, I mean.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I'm in my green room show with Dale Herr, and we were just, the video clip I was showing was you conducting Little Anthony, I'll Be Home for Christmas. And when I met you, you were a guitar player, and you're the MD for Little Anthony. And right. The one thing that we connected on at that particular time was the Midwestern history of the bands doing the rock circuit of Boyd Hunt Enterprises. And I was with a company called Mid-Continent Entertainment, and all of those bands. And that was our connection then.
No, I forgot that you said you were Mid-Continent. So did you know Igor?
I did. Igor.
Oh!
Okay. I don't want to make too much of this about me, but let me tell you an Igor story. So he came to visit me. I was turning 16. I'm not making this up. Because I was 15 playing in one of his bands. He was 16. He came. My parents owned a little restaurant in Aurora, Nebraska. He got up and he was like flipping a towel at me, and I took off running. He started chasing me. He tripped and fell and hit his head, put a big gash above and his whole eye got swollen shut. And it was sort of an awful thing, but at the end, he took a big picture of it and sent it to me and said, "Happy birthday, you little shit."
What people need to know about Igor was he was about the size of the Sphinx. I mean, okay, since we're really reminiscing back to 1492 here, I'll tell you my Igor story.
Okay.
We were loading into a club, right? And back then, I'm a guitar player by trade, but I also play keyboards. And I was playing Hammond B3 organ, and most of your audience is going to know what a Hammond B3 is. It's a really big thing, right?
Right.
And I said, Igor, all our stuff was coming off the truck and on one end of this club. And Igor was there and some other Mid-Continent guys. And I said, Igor, why don't you pick up that Hammond B3 and just carry it over the stage? Now, this is a joke, right? It takes 4 guys to lift the thing. Igor wraps his arm around it, puts it on his hip, and carries it across the dance floor, puts it up on his stage. We're all dying. It's like, it's King Kong is like our roadie, you know?
This is true. That is totally him. He was just giant, and he would just pick stuff up like it was nothing. So
Mid-Continent, the Fabulous Flippers.
Yeah.
TNT Review.
TNT, Rising Suns, a bunch of those.
The group out of, what was that? The group out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota that was pretty good. I can't think of. But yeah, and everybody had matching outfits and did 4 sets,
right.
4 dance sets and 2 show sets. And 1 week here, and then the next week you drive 500 1,000 miles to get to the next club. And
Exactly. And you were with Boyd Hunt for a while. That was the same thing, but a different agency.
yeah. Well, Boyd Hunt had TNT Review
Right.
for a while too, and that was my connection to Boyd Hunt.
Right.
And while staying at the band house that Boyd Hunt provided for his rehearsal groups, I got my piano, my twin reverb, all my albums stolen, a couple of guitar amps, Minneapolis. Things haven't changed apparently.
Right. So, before you did that, though, this is what I learned some things about you. So before you did that, the first group that you started playing with was the Coasters. Is that true? I mean, is that what you were saying?
No, the first group, that's the first artist I played with. I played in club bands and stuff prior to that, but the first actual artist group I played with was pre-Boyd Hunt, and that was when I was an embryo. I played with the original Coasters, Carl Gardner and Billy Guy, the original four of them. Carnell had come and gone by that time, and he had done another band called Carnell Gunter's Coasters. But I played with the original guys, after playing on the road with, club band from the time I was, 4.
Wait, and where did you grow up?
East St. Louis, Illinois.
That's right.
Don't go in unarmed. I'm sure you've seen the thing with Chevy Chase. They get sort of stranded in East St. Louis, and it does not go well.
Yeah.
That's a pretty accurate depiction of East St. Louis. What was in that movie? It's shall we say, you gotta be heads up.
Right. Well, what was your first band gig there? Were you doing some churches or
No,
rock?
Never played a church because the church music I did when I was a kid was all in Latin. I went to Our Lady of 42nd Street in East St. Louis, so.
Yeah.
But no, what happened was that we formed a band. I should tell you about East St. Louis is not in Missouri. It's in Illinois, as some people may not know. It's across the Mississippi River. It's part of the St. Louis metropolitan area,
Right.
But it is on the Illinois side. Now, the thing about Southern Illinois is if you have a pulse, you can be in a bar. Okay, they were lax. Okay, so there's a lot of young bands working, and back then, with no internet and cable TV and cell phones, everybody was in clubs every night. And basically, if you could walk upright and you owned an instrument, you could have a gig every night of the week. So
wow,
that's how it was. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better environment to get started in because I got a lot of professional experience at a very young age, and we're talking professional experience playing in nightclubs every night at an age that's probably 10 years younger than most guys get started now.
Right. Yeah.
So we were all very young, and we went down and we auditioned into this place that was known for having nefarious activities off the books besides having live music, if you knew the right person to talk to. So we were playing there, and we became the house band. Now, none of us were old enough to have a driver's license. Okay.
And you were the house band.
So we're driving down. So we decided we needed a vehicle for the band. So we pooled our money and bought a 1949 Packard limo. Okay. And it was the size of the Hindenburg, and none of us could drive it, but we drove it. We're all driving it like this, trying to seal the steering wheel. And so we kind of got popular, and it's not because we were good. We were popular for any other reason, but mostly because we sang songs that people liked, and kind of looked nice, and did all things that the bands that were older than us that were doing, and we just sort of followed in their footsteps. But we basically let's put it like this. The whole was greater than the sum of the parts. Okay. But nevertheless, so we're working there every night, and we're kids. We are kids. And I get a phone call, and it's this agent. And none of us had ever been on the road. I mean, none of us, a couple of us had never been on an airplane. I had, but some of the guys had never even been on a plane. And could you guys take a 3-week stand, meaning 6 nights a week for 3 weeks in Alexandria, Minnesota?
Oh.
And so we took it. right?
Yeah.
We didn't know where Minnesota was. You got to understand, we're these little hoodlums from East St. Louis, chain smoking, guys that, they were sophomores in high school. So, but we took the gig. Now, I should tell you about some of the guys in this band. Everybody looked older but me. The drummer, who's one of my best friends for life to this day, and still a great drummer, he had this olive complexion and he had a big Pancho Villa mustache. 15 years old and he looked like Yosemite Sam with this mustache. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the bass player had these Mungo Jerry chops. Okay. I had one mustache hair right there. One. I would shave it a lot to try and get things going. All right. So anyway, so we decided we'd take this gig. So I signed the contract, sent it off. Well, when we told our parents that we had an out-of-town gig, of course, all the parents,
Yeah.
So one night, I'm not making this up. One night, we worked it all out. I took my guitar amplifier, put it out the window of my bedroom. Took my guitar out the window of my bedroom and my suitcase out the window of my bedroom, climbed out, dragged that stuff to the corner and got in the Packard, and off we go to Minnesota.
Oh.
And so we're a road band, and we're those green, inexperienced, absolute amateurs, but here we are working, So we went up there and did. Oh, let me interject. In retrospect, we must have sounded awful, compared to by today's standards. But we thought we were really good. So we get up there, and after about a week there, club owner comes to me, and he's got a couple of envelopes. And in the envelopes are contracts from this same agent. And basically, can you get from Alexandria, Minnesota, over to somewhere in South Dakota or something like that? And then there was the next envelope said, after you get done with South Dakota, can you go here? We were out on the road. We were touring, and it was like we knew nothing.
Wow.
That's how it started for me.
Wow. And in Alexandria, do you remember what the club was?
No.
Oh.
No. I remember we were too loud for the place.
I did one gig in northern, because I did a club in Alexandria, but northern Minnesota, where during the day it was a strip club. And then at night they would kick the strippers out. And at night they would have teen dances on Friday nights. So they kick all the.
But it was the same crowd. It's just the girls put on clothes and came to the dance.
Pretty much, yeah. Exactly. So then after that happened, how did you get the Coasters gig and get into all of that? And then how did that lead to all of the session stuff that you started doing, which has become your main?
Okay, the Coasters gig didn't last very long. For reasons of my own, I didn't want to stay on that thing because I thought that there might be some things that I just didn't want to do. And that's all I'll say about it. But it just came as a phone call from an agent. Can you play these songs? Can you show up at a certain place and time? And can you go in and do it? And I just walked on. And it was just like that. It was just that simple. And then I didn't stay with it for very long because, for one thing, they didn't pay as much as me doing my own thing did at that time. They were paying bad. So I resumed my own enterprises at that point. Now to answer your question about how I got into sessions, what happened was that things for this band that I was telling you about that we all took off together, all five of us that were kids. Oh, I should tell you about the five of us. There were actually seven when we went, and two of the guys were so bad that they had to get demoted to become roadies. So they were the roadies, but they were so bad that we had to have this band meeting and go, guys, come on, let's be honest here. And they knew it, and so there was no bad blood. It's like, but they were the funniest roadies that ever were.
That's right. That's funny. So hey, fellas, I'm sorry, you can't play, but can you be the roadie?
Yeah. And they said, sure. We get to get in a bus and go to these places and hit on chicks while you're playing it. I said they loved it.
Oh.
So Yeah. One of those guys down now. One of those guys is hiding out in Ecuador from the law.
Are you kidding?
And he's got a PhD in biology now, but he's hiding out.
Oh man.
The other guy became a real button-down guy. But so anyway, so here we are. That group got better and better and better, and we started getting better and better and better gigs to where we were making really good money for club bands. And again, I must remind you that at that time, that's all there were. And every small town in the country had road bands, not local bands. And here's why. Because you grow up in Marshfield, Wisconsin, or something like that, okay? Everybody in that town knows all the guys in the local band, and they grew up with them. They don't want to see them. So all the club owners, they had to import bands every week to keep their clubs filled. And so you could work 7 nights a week from one end of the country to the other, and there was always work for you, okay? And so that's not the case today. I don't know how guys get going today, but back then, if you had anything at all going, some agent somewhere would put you to work. So
right.
Here again, I'm catching a break that way, right? So we get pretty good. Ultimately, by the time I turned about 21 or 22, I had managed to land a gig as band leader at the St. Louis Playboy Club. And so I had the house band, and then all these very well-known acts would come in, and they were usually R&B and jazz acts. Like we had Cannonball Adderley and Jimmy Smith, the great Hammond B3 organ player, and people like that.
And then would you guys back them up then when they?
No. As a matter of fact, the great keyboard player George Duke was playing with Cannonball at that time, and he came down to watch us and comes up to me and he goes, "Yeah, man, I like the way you play." I go, "So Duke, you want to sit in with us?" And he just blew me off. He just goes, "Oh man, I can't keep up with you cats." And he's patronizing me,
Yeah.
So we laughed about it. Jump ahead 4 or 5 years, and I'm now a busy session player in LA. And I run into George Duke at Famous Amos Cookies on Sunset Boulevard. And I walk down and sit down with him. I go, "Duke, what are you doing?" He goes, "Yeah, I remember you cats. You wanted me to play with you at the Playboy Club." So we started laughing about it. But so now things are going pretty well. And I was in Chicago and got a call to play on a commercial. And it was an airlines commercial. And I played on that. And then I go back to St. Louis and played on a couple local commercials. And the light bulb went on, and it's an epiphany. It's like, I don't have to be in a band to make money with my guitar. I mean, it never even occurred to me. I had no idea what doing studio work was until these few things came in. And so I said, that's it. For a year, I'm sending letters. This is before email. It really was. It was way before. And sending letters, sending cassette tapes, picking up the phone, cold calling people. So I landed myself a gig with a group out in LA on the strength of sending some cassettes and some photography, and they had a house gig. So I was going to go out there and walk right into an income. Okay. I get out there, and a couple of the guys in this group are songwriters. Now I'm in town a week, okay, at this point. I've played a couple nights with them, and this is still in the middle of the week. And one these guys said, "Man, can you come in? We're doing a demo session tomorrow. Can you come in and play guitar?" Okay. And all I had done is play on 3 or 4 commercials in my life in the studio. And that's the extent of my studio experience at that point. And I still wasn't any good at it. So anyway, I play on this demo. And the first thing I did when I had gotten to LA is I had some little business cards made up that you could get in an hour at some place, and I got a phone number, and I had my number on it. I said, Dale Herr, studio musician, it's albeit, so I play on this demo at a rather well-known studio on Melrose Avenue in LA. And I'm walking out the door after the session. I give my card to the studio owner who happened to engineer that date. I said, "Hey, if you need any more of this studio guitar playing stuff, I'm your guy." And he's looking at me like, "Who is this rube that just fell off the turnip truck?" So, and I didn't realize it at that time, but that's how he was looking at me. I just didn't know.
Oh.
So I get home to my apartment in Hollywood, and my apartment in Hollywood was about the size of this room that I'm in right now. And phone rings, and it's this guy. the same guy, this engineer. He says, can you get back down here right away? We've got something for you. And I go in there and I walk into this session, and there stands a bunch of guys that are, obviously it's going to be an R&B demo day, because there stands a guy that looks like Mr. T, and one guy looks like Superfly, and one guy looks like Mike Tyson. You know, I mean, they're all bling, hats, feathers, outrageous clothes, you know, the whole thing. Well, they had cut some stuff the night before, and they needed some guitar overdubs. Now, I mentioned to you that I grew up in East St. Louis, right?
Right.
Very, very urban community, and touched by the hand of God. That's the way I always played, was like those kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
That was because that was all the work I had coming up when I was a kid, was playing that stuff with those kind of guys. So when I sat down to put in my parts, it was what they were looking for. All right.
Mm.
And they had a good arranger. I mean, it was a lot of stuff was written out, and I could read music pretty well. So then I'm walking out the door from this, and it's cash day, not a union day. And the big man says, look, do you play the bass? And I've always heard you have to say yes to everything. Now, at that time, I didn't want to take this date, and I knew I wouldn't have to, because I didn't have a bass there, and because everything was written, I couldn't read it in the bass clef very well at all then, like barely, okay?
Mm.
And he goes, oh, well, wait, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and it's like King Kong's hand, and it's on my shoulder, and he's holding me from walking out the door, and he hands me a bass. He says, we got the bass right here. I'm dying, because I know I'll never be able to read this part, right? I'm thinking, oh, these guys are going to take me out back and break my legs.
Oh.
Well, he said, and then he says, yeah, the brother last night, he couldn't read the part. I'm thinking, oh, God, they had a good bass player, and he couldn't read. It's got to be horrible. I open up the part, okay? Let me get a piece of music. Okay, I'll demonstrate. I open up the part. Up in the corner, it says bass guitar. As God is my witness, the arranger has written it in the treble clef, which that's what the guitar, yes. So I look at this part, and I didn't let on like, hey, no wonder. I just said, I can play this. And I started singing them the part.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. I put the part on the stand. Their bass used a pick. I mean, I wasn't a bass player. Used a pick. I played this part off, and they were real happy with it. These guys started calling me every day. Wow. I've been in town a week, and now I am working every day as a session player. Low rent, non-union, low buck, R&B demo dates. But these guys introduced me to some other guys who introduced me to some other guys. So now I got 3 or 4 factions of groups like this that are hiring me to play every day. And I haven't been in town long enough to open my suitcase.
Holy cow.
I got a career as a session player.
Well, you know, I hear stories all the time about guys that go to LA or they come here and they're going to get gigs like that, and they sit around for years trying to network.
Well, the word here in Nashville is it's a 5-year town before you can get on a demo. I mean, that's what everybody told me before I came. That wasn't true for me at all. I mean, I brought work here, so that didn't affect me. But
yeah. So
that's literally how it happened for me.
Wow. And then what ultimately led to you doing all of the TV stuff, which I find really fascinating, because you sent me the list of the TV shows you've worked on. There's like almost 300 cues, 300 different TV shows.
No, there's like thousands of cues. There's like 300 different shows.
Right. So, I mean, like one of them you might have done, you could just say, I forget some of the ones that stood out to me, but one TV show you could do 100 or 200 cues for, depending on which
over the season.
Over a season. And explain to people what that is, because they may not understand. You told me the story about somebody said, oh, they just use canned music. I'm like, well,
that was a former mother-in-law. When I was trying to explain to her what I did when I was courting her daughter, and she didn't want her daughter dating a drug-addled drunkard musician, and I said, no, everybody I work with, we all carry briefcases, we all have stock portfolio, we're homeowners, so it's a business. The only musicians that she'd ever seen in her life were like people on television or rock and roll guys, and all, the kind of press some people get, she just thought musicians were probably like lowest end of the, evolutionary scale. And I said, no, what I do is, I create music for TV shows. And she says to me, in all earnestness, she says, well, I thought they just used canned music. And I went, well, it doesn't write itself, it doesn't play itself, it doesn't record itself, and it doesn't jump into the can by itself.
Right.
You know, that's music that somebody has to put together. They have to write it and compose it, and arrange it if it's an orchestra, and yes, it gets into a can, but that's the last thing. And a lot of people have no understanding that what it takes to do all that. And not only is it the writing of the music, but if you're doing underscore, there is a lot of real tricky arithmetic with the synchronization to the film. You know, film goes by at 24 frames a second, video goes by at 30 frames a second, and you've got to be able to cut a frame in half with picture obligation. So if your character is doing this, Bob, you got to know how to get those frames right on the frame. If it's half a second late, the eye will catch that, and it looks like the guy doesn't know what he's doing. You know, so
so when you're
there's
watching,
an awful lot of that goes into it, besides just writing music that fits.
right? So when you were doing the parts, would you get the video clip? Was that sent to you, and then you had to play along with it, or did you go to the studio?
No, you don't play along with it. You write to it. In other words, the video or the film has what's called SMPTE numbers. Okay, so a SMPTE number refers to a number on each frame. Okay, so that you know that if a frame at such and such a number, that's where the guy gets shot. That's where the gunshot is, or whatever it is. Okay, and then you know what the director has told you where you want the music to start. So then you have the running time. You can calculate the actual running time between the start of the music and that picture obligation. Okay, so then your obligation might say you're at 1 minute, 13 seconds, and 8 frames. Okay, so that's your stretch on what you're looking at for the film or video. Then, when you pick out a tempo of music, you got to pick out a tempo that is going to get you all of your picture obligations, such that you know that in this piece of music, in bar 65 on the upbeat of beat 3, that's where that thing hits.
Oh.
And what you do is you mark all that stuff in before you write the music, so you know what you got to hit while you're writing. And that's how that works.
Oh man. And there are multiple cues per TV show, right? So if there's a TV show going, there's a theme song, the beginning and end, but throughout the show, there are things that you were saying are underscores or under.
That's called underscore.
Yeah.
Right? The theme. Now the rules on how that stuff is used has changed considerably, but say in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a time when you had to re-record the theme every week.
Really?
And the guy that was under pressure the most during it was the trumpet player on Dallas, because he had to do that high part every week.
Wow.
Okay, but they got to where you could reuse it, and then they started being able to reuse more and more music. And finally, they said if you record this much music, you can reuse it over and over and over. They really got lax with that in terms of what they required, and that hurt composers and musicians because it took a lot of work away. But
yeah,
that's how it happened.
So that was a union thing that said that you needed to use the musicians and re-record it in order to keep them working. Is that what that was?
Yeah. The union caved on an awful lot of things during my time in LA. I've been in 4 different locals in my career. I'm currently a member of 104 Salt Lake, but I was in Nashville for a long time, and of course Los Angeles for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in my very first union when I was living in East St. Louis, but it was the Edwardsville, Illinois local of all things, because the girl that ran the union was also an agent, and that's how I got into the whole thing. So,
yeah. So the other thing that people don't understand about what goes on all these scores and all these cues and stuff that you do for TV and film and everything, and then I want to talk about that the TV, that the bad orchestration the orchestration gone bad thing.
Oh, yeah,
I want to hear. So what people don't realize that you explained to me was there's a composer that might get to do the entire TV show, and then he hires out other guys to do all the music during the show, and he may not have anything to do other than just the theme.
Well, the theme is where the money is in terms of the broadcast royalties, whether you're ASCAP or BMI, CSAT, the people that regulate your royalties. The theme on over-the-air broadcast on the big networks, that's the biggest money in terms of the rate that they pay. Okay, if you're doing underscore on a cable show, you're getting 1/7 of that, 1/7 of that. Okay? So you always want the theme, and you always want it to be network. Okay?
Yeah, right.
I made a lot of money in cable, but it's from volume.
Yeah.
But so that's pretty much how that works. And certain composers have several ghostwriters. I did a lot of ghostwriting for some of these guys, but because the schedules are so tight, and there's some shows have such huge music obligations that a human being couldn't do it. You got to have people working with the orchestrators. Well, I'll give you an example where I had to hire some help to do something. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a true story. You're gonna think this. I'm making this up. The music supervisor, Columbia Pictures Television, called me at midnight. Okay, and they had just re-edited a whole bunch of scenes in this show, and they were going to post-production the next day, and they needed music, and there was no time. And the guy calls me up and said, Dale, I need you to have Handel's Messiah ready to go at 9 a.m. It's midnight. And I thought he wanted me to come in and conduct it or be music supervisor on something that was already going on. No, they didn't have a note down. Okay.
No.
And I said, well, do you have a stock score that I can look at? And he said, no. I said, what do you have? Do you have piano sketch? No. I said, what do you have? He says, I got a vinyl record. And now back in LA at that time, they had messenger services that worked 24 hours a day. So I said, send me the record. I said, all right. Then I said, get me 3 copyists. You know what music copyists is. They look at the score, and then they copy out the parts for the individual instruments so that that person is only reading his instrument.
Right.
So it's a lot of paperwork. So get 3 copyists over here in 2 hours. And then I said, well, do you have your orchestra contracted for in the morning? No.
Oh. Oh my
I'm not
God.
making this.
This is at midnight. I mean,
so there's a lot of great contractors that had all this stuff going, for the TV and film dates. And there was only one guy I knew I could call. Okay. I'm not going to use his name. I'm not going to use anybody's name in the course of this podcast. But see, he had a wife that thought she was a singer.
Okay.
And I would hire her sometimes. Her fader would be this, but I would hire her just to stay and get with this guy. So I called him, and he was a New Yorker with a very colorful vocabulary, if you get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
And it woke him up, and he was just cigar chomping, foul mouth kind of guy. Why do you know, all that stuff. I said, here's what I need. I need you to get me, I said, 8 brass, 8 woodwinds, and some percussion, and I don't care in any order whatsoever. Just get me this many people that can breathe, and we'll figure out what to do when we get there. And he says, do you know what this is going to cost you? And I said, it's going to cost me nothing. It's costing Columbia Pictures Television whatever you want to charge. So sure enough, he got a bunch of people together. Now, the copyists show up, okay? Now, I called the music supervisor back. I said, how much do you need? He said, 90 seconds for this scene. Okay, now, and what they wanted was a big part of the Alleluia chorus. So I what score page is. It's like 20 staves deep and about this long.
Right.
And you see the whole orchestra on it if you're the conductor. So I laid out all these score pages in the hallway of my apartment from one end to the other. And I started writing in the melody. I said, okay, I want these guys to carry the melody here, these guys to carry the melody here. And so I'm moving the melody around a lot, between various groups of strings and brass. And then I started making some pencil notes with Post-its. I said, cellos in tenths, violas an octave below the first violins. I'm making all these notes on the thing.
Yeah.
So the copyist showed. No, copyist is grunt work. You're copying off the score and basically doing grunt work. I said, they all showed up together. They came together and I said, you guys really want to be arrangers, don't you? Of course they did. That's why they're doing this. They're working their way up, right?
Right.
I said, poof, you're an arranger. Here's what I want done. And what I did was I was just pointing at stuff on the score, saying, you do it like this, you do it like this. And I'd go back and I'd look at a section. I'd say, okay, let's bring that up an octave. Let's double the French horns here. And pretty soon it was starting to look like da 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 da. It was starting to look right,
Yeah.
So we went in there, and it was about 6 a.m. I said, okay, this is the score. Copy the parts and bring it to the record plant and walk in the door with it at 9 a.m. They did it. I'm like this. The copyists are like this. The music supervisor is like this. The contractor's like this. Pass that part out. It wasn't great, but it was okay. And we made the deadline. Now, the great TV composer Mike Post.
Yes.
Many. More TV shows than you can count.
Right.
His famous quotation, which is on my Facebook page, is, it doesn't have to be great, but it's got to be there at 9 o'clock. And that is my mantra. And I had to ride an orchestration on a plane once going from San Francisco to LA, and I called up the contractor and said, have an orchestra waiting for me there on some copies. And I wrote a 30-second TV commercial with about a 40-piece orchestra on the plane, handed it to the copyists when I got off the plane, and they brought it over to the studio and we got it.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people don't understand the timing of music on some of these shows, and they do. That's always the last thing that goes on, right? The music.
It has that and the Foley, but usually it's the music.
Yeah. And they do that just before it goes, just before it needs to be ready. So you're under pressure.
We are always right before post-production.
Right.
Post-production is when you're in a studio where they have all the visual stuff, and then all the sound effects, all of the dialogue, and then what they have after dialogue, and the Foley is like, if you see somebody walking down the street and you hear their heels tapping on the sidewalk, that's not recorded while they're walking. That's recorded on a Foley stage, and they add that because it's too complicated to get all the live sound.
Right. So how different is all of that from all of the jingles that you wrote? And this is the one thing that I want to know. When did you learn to conduct?
Okay, I wasn't going to go here because you're going to think I'm making this up. Okay. I'll tell you. It's going to take 5 minutes, but I'll tell you. So I'm now working pretty steady as a guitar player, and I've been ghostwriting a few arrangements here and there, and they're simple ones. And I'm still pretty young, but so I get a phone call from this producer that's busy, and you know his name. And we go into a well-known studio, and the arranger he had on this tape was a trumpet player. And this particular producer was about 6'5" and weighed about 80 pounds. I mean, he was, this is his body, okay?
Wow, man.
And he was from West Texas. And you know how in West Texas, they sort of speak with a little whistle at the end of every S. That's how this guy talked. Okay, so he was West Texas. So we got the orchestra there, and I'm sitting in the guitar chair that pats out the parts, and they count this thing off, and we're burning, and it sounds like Maynard Ferguson. I mean, big band, burning, high screech, horn jazz, right?
Yeah.
Not what the producer wanted. It's what the trumpet player on this gig was the arranger, and that's what he liked. And producer walks out onto the floor where we are, and we can all see this. Came out and said, no, I'm not going to use the guy's name. His name said, we needed this to sound like the Doobie Brothers, not Maynard Ferguson.
Whoa.
You know how the Doobie Brothers had some horn punches on some of the records.
Right.
And this trumpet player said, you effing redneck, you don't know jack shit. Just let me do this. Producer says, this does get to how I'm going to learn how to be a conductor, by the way. So producer says, will you come in the control room with me for a minute? So the control room has an entire glass wall that we can see into.
Yeah.
The console's facing us. this guy, strum player, has his back to us and back to the console. Mr. 6'4", 80 pounds, grabs this guy by the throat, bends him back over the console, and goes boom, 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 with this guy's head on this console, and picks him up like this and carries him out of the studio and throws him into the parking lot.
No. Whoa.
And his horn.
Whoa.
Comes back in. You'd never known anything happened. This guy didn't break a sweat. You'd have thought he'd just say, hey, it's a sunny day. Walks in, hands all of our checks and said, thank you, gentlemen. That'll be all for today. That's it. We leave. We didn't cut one track. A week later, the same producer calls me and says, Dale, I'd like you to be session player for me and be my session leader. He never heard me play a note. You know, I got some good recommendations to him, but he never heard me play.
Yeah.
And so he says, you'll get me the top guys, right? I said, oh, yes. I didn't know the top guys. I was new. You know, I didn't know them. So I called up the top guys and I said, look, I can book you for 30 straight days on a big, expensive album if you walk in the first day and act like you've been knowing me my whole life. And these guys all went for it. Okay. Yeah. So I brought in all these 18 guys in LA that didn't know who I was, but they acted like they did. Tracks go great. We've got this studio locked out for a month, and I mean, it's just smoking. A very expensive album in dollars for those days. So that all went great. So the president of record company, vice president of record company, this producer, Al come to me and said, yeah, you did a nice job. Who should we get to do the sweetening? And as most of your audience probably know, sweetening is when you add the strings and horns later as an overdub. And they were thinking the big names, Jimmy Haskell, Gene Page, right. David Campbell, all the real big names, string arrangers around LA at that time. And lying through my teeth, I said, oh, I'd do that great. And they said, well, okay. I didn't have a clue. I'd never done anything like that. So I started calling up, speaking of Mike Post, I called up one of these guys that were one of Mike Post's ghostwriters, and I called up 4 or 5 other good arrangers. And I said, how do I do this? And I had a good idea. I had a good sense of harmony and stuff like that. But they were telling me, you're right, this much distance between the first and second violins, and you need this many more first violins than you do second violins because of the weight and the way it sounds. And you want to do this, and you want to have this kind of contrary motion, and you don't want to have big fat chords. You want to have motion. All these quick tricks. And then I started listening to everything that Jimmy Haskell had ever arranged on strings, and all the Motown records, that all of those guys, Ernie Freeman and all those guys did. So I just started stealing, right? And so then, now it's time to get an orchestra together. Well, as it happens, I had a neighbor that was principal cellist with the LA Philharmonic. Whoa. So I go over to him, and the guy's name is Pete Snyder. I said, Pete, how'd you like to make double scale on a bunch of sessions? He said, sure, what do I have to do? I go, poof, you're a contractor. I need you to get me all guys out of the Philharmonic for my sessions. He said, no problem, because they were going to get paid scale anyway. It didn't matter. But, yeah. So then I go in and hand the record company this budget for these string dates that are coming up right on this project. And they die. This is a lot of money. And I acted like it was nothing. I went like, hey, when you hired me, you knew that I only use guys out of Philharmonic, right? Nobody wants to act like they didn't know something. Yeah. We do that. Of course. We always do that. Of course. Yeah. All right, now I've never conducted anything. Okay, I've never conducted a thing. Now it's the first day of the sweetening. 24 strings, 8 brass, 8 woodwinds. It's big. Okay, we're on scoring stage, to do this. And I'm in the control room, and they got all these open mics, and I'm hearing everything going on out there. I pulled the master room fader down so you can't hear anything. I walked out onto that floor, and I said, it's going to take you guys 2 seconds to know that I don't know what I'm doing. But if you all act like I do, we're going to get a lot of work. I promise you. Okay? They all nod their heads. I said, besides, there's click track, there's drums on the track. You won't need me to conduct anything. Just play right up, bow them right down on top of the drums. We'll be fine. They all agree. I go out there. I've never conducted. I've seen guys do this. Right. So I'm conducting like this. I'm doing all this crazy BS. Trying to make it look good. and they're buying it. You know, the guy from Texas, this producer, I mean, he's fundamentally a country music guy. He doesn't know any of the technical stuff. Record company guys, they're like, there's business guys. They're not really music guys.
Right.
A lot of record guys are, but these guys weren't. They were business guys, lawyers and stuff. And so, man, and songwriters that are in the control room, they think it's great. It's really loud, because one of the things I learned early on is you get enough guys playing, it's always going to sound good. So that's why I asked for a large orchestra.
Mm.
And so anyway, now here's where it goes bad. There's a long passageway between the floor where I have this orchestra and a control room. I'm going in to listen to a playback, and standing in there like this is the secretary to the president of the record company. And she is a classical musician that had been in the symphony.
Oh, no.
And she's sitting there like this. She's giving me the stink eye. She says, "You don't have a clue, do you?" And I said, "Where would you like to go to dinner? Pick someplace expensive." She did, Ruth's Chris or something, And so it cost me a dinner to get her to shut up. But those guys started hiring me all the time.
Wow.
Little by little, I learned how to do this better and better and more of it.
Yeah.
And then when I started getting on some TV dates, then I knew a little bit more about how to do it, So
Right. And that all led to, where did the when I had David Garibaldi on, and you knew him because you'd used him to record. You were the guy doing the USFL music.
Yeah, way back in 1901 when USFL was a football network on ABC TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that theme music and all that exciting breakaway music and all that stuff. What they had done is somebody on the East Coast had written a piano demo that sounded like something like probably like whatever it is they did.
Yeah.
And I had to turn that into this whole big exciting stuff. So I used a pretty good sized orchestra on that, and I hired Dave. And and when I write stuff, I mean, I don't write baby food. I write stuff that sometimes can be tough to sight read. And Dave, I mean, he owned it. He was amazing. His sound, his time, his demeanor on the session. I mean, he's a wonderful guy. And he and I became pretty good friends, and was at his house several times and knew his wife. And I used him on some other dates too. And of course, there's never been a better drummer on the face of this earth. I don't care if you say Buddy Rich or Krupa or Narada Malden or any of them.
Yeah.
It's Garibaldi is there's him, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, he's a great player.
And I've gotten to work with some of the extreme, very best in my lifetime.
And so, when did you leave LA? Why did you leave LA? Because all of your work was going really well there for the music and TV and jingles and all that stuff you were doing.
Well, I'd always heard that you can burn out doing TV, and it was coming for me, because in that world and in the jingle world too, I told you about the thing where Handel's Messiah, and there was a lot of stuff like that where we just had to turn stuff over like that. And guys, Mark Snow and Mike Post and a few guys, they last for 30 years doing it. But most guys do it for a few years, and then by then their nerves are shot. For example, the one music supervisor that I worked for a lot, he just had to walk away. I mean, the pressure was too much. A couple of the line producers and directors on several of the shows I was working with, they'd work on a show 3 or 4 years, and they needed to move to Oregon for a couple of years or something. The pressure is insane, and I could see that it was coming. And several of my friends had already moved to Nashville. Now, what happened was that I had to come to Memphis, where there's a place called Motion Picture Labs, because I had to do the laybacks on industrial film that I had scored. And when I say laybacks, that means when you sync the music to the picture and make sure it all locks up in the right frame and all that stuff. That's called layback. Well, so I had come to Nashville a year or two before that just to play on a couple sessions on a record. But in and out, flew in, played on a session, got back on a plane, went home. I didn't know anything about Nashville, really. So I had a few days. So we jumped in the car and came over to Nashville and started looking around. And I said, "You can buy a house for what?" Are you kidding me? So I stuck around town and found a place and went and secured it. And I told this guy, I said, "I don't know when I'm coming back, but I can't pass this up. So I'll let you know when I'm going to move here, if I move here. But in the meantime, I'll pay you every month for this place. Okay.
Yeah.
So sure enough, another TV season goes by and more screaming matches amongst the higher ups and more stress and all that kind of stuff. And one day I just said, that's it. I just packed up my stuff, sold a bunch of stuff off, packed up a big box truck and came on ahead, put my hot rod on the trailer, and here I came.
Wow. And were you still able to do some of the music cues from Nashville?
Not in the same way. I couldn't do direct post score anymore. I did what's called licensed music. And that is to say, I'd cut some stuff wild and then license it, and they would drop it into a show.
Oh.
And I haven't done that now for a year or two, but for these many years, I've done an awful lot of that.
Well,
and I might jump back into it now that nobody's touring anymore.
Right. Well, that it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, when you were doing all the music cues and the union was having people do all of the stuff, as they started being able to use pre-recorded music, that's when the whole music library thing started taking over, right? And
exactly. For good, bad, or indifferent, I was able to get in on the good side of that. Okay. And a lot of my ASCAP income actually comes from music library stuff that I hold the copyrights on. I've got probably 900 copyrights, and probably of those, probably 500 of them are equity earning in terms of reuse on television shows, and a good portion of those actually exist in music libraries that get used overseas, which is quite a market.
Well, see, this is one thing that a lot of people don't really understand, is another aspect of being a musician and a part of the music business that nobody really ever even talks about. When they think of a guitar player, you're in a band or you're playing for a record and you might do a movie date, but this is a whole nother little segment of what we're talking about that goes into TV shows and even movies and stuff.
I've done some music movies. It's like I've done some big hits like Unchained Nurses from Sweden.
I want to see that one.
Vampire zombies in the asylum. I've done the big ones. Okay?
Oh.
Myself and John Williams, we run together.
Right. Okay, so the other thing that fascinated me most, I was telling you about my oldest daughter doing Chicago, and you go, oh yeah, Jay Berliner, and then you started telling me about the Broadway stuff you do. Have you been to New York and done plays there, or do you do them? I mean, what's your involvement with the Broadway scene?
Most of the work I do, Broadway shows, are licensed shows that are running in Nashville. I have been to New York and done some stuff on some occasions. Mm-hmm. But as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I was getting enough work up there that I was that close. Don Adams, that close, Steve, to moving there. Okay, and I was up there about 15 years ago. I was up there on a show continuously for a while and renting a place, and then. I was starting to go back here a couple of years ago. I was starting to go back up there a lot and just do short runs up there and not doing Wicked for 15 years like, right. Guys will do. And so I was getting connected enough and getting enough work to where I was actually apartment hunting. Okay. And then along came the lovely Dr. Christie. Dr. Christie is my gorgeous bride. And she is a superb, well-known physician, and did not want to move to New York. She had lived there before, and I have a very, very nice place where I live here in Nashville, on a bunch of ground and stuff like that. And now it turns out it was fortuitous because all those Broadway guys are not working at all. They won't work till next year.
Right. Oh, at least. Yeah.
So it was like, and plus, it's like. Those guys, you're paying $5,000 a month for 900 square feet in Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, and so a couple of years ago, we decided that we weren't going to look at that seriously. If I have to go up there and do something short term, that's fine. But I'm no longer interested in moving there, whereas I was for a while.
So right now you're able to do a fair amount of sessions and like some jingles, movies, and some of the TV stuff still a little bit.
Yeah, I'm doing all of it. Until we all got shut down with what's going on now, this virus stuff. I was always had a pit gig too. I just like to play,
right?
But I don't like to go out and play in bars. But I always had a gig at night playing on some touring Broadway show or a local production. There's several companies here that are very professional, that are Broadway level production houses.
Right.
So I usually had a chair on some show, and I could sub out of that whenever I wanted. For example, Little Anthony is doing a concert or a run out or something like that. I just send my sub in, I'd get on a plane, go play with Anthony, and then get off the plane, come back and get my chair.
And I want to tell you too, and hats off to you for being the MD of Little Anthony, because of the guy that I work with, that hired you guys to come and do the show here in San Bernardino. He gets a lot of those acts that come in that just kind of are okay, But what I want to be nice, but they're just kind of okay. You guys came. And oh my God, it was the real deal, right? I mean, the band was at the level that every band should be to back up the singers. I mean, you guys played it.
Let me interrupt you by saying this. First of all, I stand on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. Anthony has the best ears of anybody I ever worked with. And he has always hired great arrangers. The guy, I'll tell you who arranged his records, most of them originally, his really big ones, Don Costa. Who, Frank Sinatra, among many others, Billy May, this level arranger, these legendary arrangers, that's who was writing Anthony's charts. And so that's a big thing to live up to. And then, of course, on the more modern stuff, he's hired, really, really superb arrangers along the way for our more modern part of our repertoire. And then Anthony pays well. A lot of these oldies acts, breadcrumbs. Anthony pays very well, so he is able to get the best guys in his band,
right.
Because, for example, I was speaking with the Secretary of the Union here in Nashville, and he was telling me, this is a few years back, he was telling me what the guys in Garth Brooks's band get. Okay, he disclosed that to me privately. Mm-hmm. And I said, you got to be kidding. I said, we're all making, the lowest guy in our band is making twice that.
Yeah.
So Anthony's very generous, generous. And because he is, guys won't leave the band, and he can afford to recruit very top guys. And so the band sounds good because he hires good guys. He has great arrangements, very disciplined guys. Nobody's late for the lobby call. Nobody's late at the airport. Nobody's late to the sound check. Very disciplined bunch of guys. And Anthony's got ears that can hear paint dry. I mean, he's really great. And if I may add this, I was just on the phone with him yesterday. He's about the nicest human being I know. He's genuinely a nice man.
Well, I got a chance to meet him and talk to him a little bit. And yeah, I totally agree. And all of those guys singing, and oh my God, could they sing? I mean, it was unbelievable. And then your drummer played the thing like it was supposed to be played. Your drummer played it like
that Marcus Williams. He's got a legacy. He came. We got him. Who was he playing with? He was playing with, I think. Who did he come with? I can't remember what his order of business was, but he was with Isaac Hayes for a long time. He was with SOS Band. He did all Tyler Perry's movies. The drums on all soundtracks on it. His mother is the legendary Candy Staten.
No.
Yeah.
Young hearts run free. I love that song. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. Candy was coming here to do something. We have a kind of a hipster TV show here that's done locally, and it's all these guys with the latest haircut and singing really, they're really bad singers and their songs are dumb. But Candy Staten was on there, and she was going on last, right? And I recruited some background singers for her. She brought her own band up from Atlanta. And anyway, but I recruited background singers, and I helped them get their rehearsal space together and get all this together. So all the hipsters are out there, and they're all like, dude, for all these other acts. Candy Staten came out there, and she took them to school so hard. This is how you're supposed to sing. The crowd was like dumbfounded. You could see 500 people in a room going, geez, we thought we were good, until they heard her.
Right.
She just absolutely left them in the dust.
Oh.
And she's a very nice woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I mean, I love that song in particular and that whole stuff that she was doing. Yeah. Great. So,
yeah. Sweetheart.
My daughter was auditioning for a vocal thing in her school, and she used that song to sing for her vocal audition just because she liked the song,
Yeah.
So,
and she did that. And a couple of these players that she brought up from Atlanta with her, it's like, it's like take you to church, boy. I mean, they had it.
Yeah. Well, and that was my experience with Little Anthony, which was so, and it was eye-opening for the producer that I was working with, because he was, all of a sudden he heard, like, I kept telling him, and you got to have bands that can play. And then when you guys came, he was like, oh, that's how it's.
If I remember right, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but there was a house band back and a bunch of other acts on that date. If I remember, it's been a couple of years or something.
Yeah.
There was like a house band, and these acts would come on and do a couple of hits.
Right.
At the end of the night, we brought our whole thing on and did it. Is that?
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, where they were, it was fine, but you caused it, and your performance caused it to move to another level. It just, it pushed him to move up, and it was a good thing, because now it's gotten way, way better since then.
That particular producer has called me a couple of times to come out and do something and help on a couple of dates, but I was not available, sadly.
Yeah. So what's the plan for, I mean, you're able to do some work still, but what's the plan for, do you see anything coming till next year, or what do you think?
Well, we don't know. Okay. 2 hours ago, right before we got on the phone to set this up, I'm at a place called the Sound Check. And Sound Check, for those of us that are all in the music business, is very similar to a place called like SIR, where all the musicians store all their gear. And a lot of us need storage space because a lot of us have a bunch of gear. But not only that, they have all these rehearsal stages, everywhere from stadium-sized stages to club-sized stages and whatever. So the rehearsal space, storage, and cartage simply means that same company delivers your stuff to your gig or your session.
Right.
So the place where I do it is called Sound Check, and there's one in Austin, and there's 3 or 4 of them around the country, much like there are SIR. Anyway, so I'm at SIR, and who do I run into but Clay Walker, country star Clay Walker's his tour manager. We're talking outside the door there. I said, are you guys doing anything? He said, no, they canceled us March 6th. And so they canceled the rest of our March. They canceled, April, May, June. They just lost all the live days. Well, our last date with Anthony, we were working every other day, doing a show day, travel day, show day, travel. We were working. March 4th was our last date. We were down in the Miami area. We fly home for a couple of days. We don't go back out. They canceled our March. Then they canceled April, canceled June, canceled July. We found out kind of late in the game that they canceled our July, and we had a bunch of bank in July. I'll tell you right now. I mean, we had several amphitheaters, big dates, big money. So, and then August got like that. So now we think we might have a date with Little Anthony in September. Problem we see is that we're an act that plays very well in the Northeast, New York City, Boston, Philly, Jersey, up and down the Eastern Seaboard, Miami, like that. And we work in Vegas. We work in LA a couple times a year. we're not a group that does particularly well in Kearney, Nebraska.
Right.
I said that for you,
yeah,
right?
Right. See, yeah, nobody does well in Nebraska. Let me just put it. No.
Yeah. Well, right. But that was for you. But,
Right. Well, I
it's
appreciate
true.
that.
We work Chicago once every 5 years or something. We work Milwaukee once every 5 years. We had a Tennessee date get blown out in that time. Knoxville got blown out. We haven't worked in Nashville since 2009. And on that date, it was us and Little Richard at the Grand Ole Opry, no country acts. Us and Little Richard sold it out.
Oh, man.
And of course, I don't know if you've been around Little Richard, but the people that are in his orbit are colorful.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Rest his soul, but man, what an entourage he had.
Yeah.
And they stormed our green room and took our food.
Yeah, well, I do that. I just try to take everybody's food all the time. That's the only reason I do gigs, man. I bring Tupperware and I steal it.
Yeah.
Well, so
on the road, you have to eat when you can and sleep when you can.
Right. So my daughter said, and I talked to her yesterday, that right now Broadway is doing ticket sales for September. They're selling tickets for September, but they're waiting because at any moment they can say, okay, sorry, we got to push it back. And it looks like things may get pushed back to all of dates I'm hearing.
No doubt. I have many, many good, close guitar playing buddies that play on those shows.
Yeah.
Plus, I have many friends that do the big national tours. My good friend Ralph Agresta has been out on the road for the last year with the national tour of Cats, which every few years Cats goes around again. And Troika or whoever owns them puts a lot of money into a big national tour.
Right.
And they're not playing the small art houses. They're playing big performing arts centers. Right. And so and they just pulled them off. They took them right off the road. Yeah. And I've got another good friend of mine's been the guitar player on Wicked for 15 years.
Yeah.
And because it won't go away. And they closed down. And I got friends that are doing Kinky Boots. I got 3 or 4 friends in the band on Kinky Boots, and which I have sat down in that pit before, and it is a technical masterpiece. They let me down there and gave me a set of headphones and a couple of screens, and I didn't play on it, but I just hung out with them down there. But yeah, it's a technical masterpiece.
Well, how they're operating those shows now. It's become more technical, and Hamilton is kind of like pushing it in that direction, where the drummer is down underneath in his own drum booth as he is almost like he's in a studio, and they've got guys all separated and isolated, playing to clicks and all kinds of things, and watching the conductor on a screen, and they're doing all kinds of different, cues and electronic stuff. It's not just sitting and playing anymore the way it used to be.
No, not at all. And it's very commonplace. For example, like keyboard players, there's a preponderance of keyboard players, 3 or 4 keyboard players on each show, and each guy, you're changing sounds constantly, and so they have everything on a computer to where you just tap a little foot pedal and you change a whole bunch of sounds real fast. I've got this one. I don't know if see if you can see it.
And you were telling me about that. You were doing a keyboard thing, and the hardest part was programming your changes. We can't really see it right now.
There.
Oh my God! Look at
See the button?
Yeah.
That's what the music I can sight read blindfolded, but making all the changes fast enough. And right now, what we're doing is taking one of my computers, and we're getting all of this into a program to where I'm doing it all on a computer instead of with MIDI over on my keyboard.
Right. So what you're doing now is all of those different colors are a different patch and a different sound.
Right. I'll give you an example. Let's see. Let me find a good one here. sorry to turn my back on your audience here, but let me open something up.
That's right.
Okay. Well, here we go. I got to program something in a performance set. Okay, so now this first sound is a sound that has bells and strings. No, what is it? Yeah, strings and bells. So I've got the strings. Whoops. Hang on a second. Pilot error. Okay, for right now it's going to be flute and bells, but
Okay.
Okay, so oh wait, I know what's wrong. Pilot error here.
That's the way I do most of my sound gigs.
Okay, now strings.
Yeah.
And bell, right?
Right.
But I've got this program to where with one touch, although I didn't do it with one touch just now, but honestly, I'll make it work. That comes up at the same time, and I play something that looks like this. You'll recognize the song. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Mamma Mia.
Everlasting Love. It's a thing. That's
Everlasting Love. What is that in?
Well, it's going to be in this thing that this.
I got you. Okay.
Now coming together. A friend of mine's writing a jukebox show with a lot of hits in it. That's a term when you use existing songs in a new musical. It's called a jukebox show.
Okay.
All right, so now, so I'm playing. And with one touch, I suddenly have to go here. See, and get into the strings and brass together, and I did it with one button.
Okay. Yes, because
now, that's going on constantly to where I might only have 4 bars of that brass, and then I have to get into the strings, then maybe get over to a French horn, and so I'm constantly, mostly playing the keyboards with one hand and tapping the programs forward up on the top of the instrument.
Oh yeah, and that's really critical sometimes when you can't make those changes without having it easy.
Well, we've made it extremely easy. We programmed this thing to do that to where I'm mostly doing it with just one tap, and I'm changing all kinds of stuff with just one button. But we're going to make it even easier because we're going to get it all computerized here, and that's where my computer is right now with the tech that's doing it for me.
I see. Are you using a particular program to? Are you using Ableton?
The two main programs. A lot of guys use a thing called MainStage, and that's probably the most popular one.
Mm-hmm.
But we're using a program called Reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Reason. A lot of people use Reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool, man. And so you're going to be playing keyboards in that.
Yes. The pit band for this show is only going to be a 5-piece, and it's going to be a dedicated guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer, and then another keyboard player that's dedicated keys. And I'm going back and forth between guitar and keys. So there's certain pieces where I'll go 8 bars on the guitar and then boom, reach down and have to suddenly play some stuff on the keyboard and then play 8 bars of that and then get back to the keys.
Oh, so
I've been doing that since I was really young, so it's not a big deal.
So that doesn't feel bad. You know, some guys that would freak out.
Yes, but I've been doing it for so long that I've done that on several other shows. I played the Broadway show Rent. I played keys and guitar on because they didn't want to hire a keyboard 2 player. The way that book is written, and Rent, as you know, is quite a show.
Right.
It's written for guitar 1 plays electric guitar and acoustic guitar, and guitar 2 plays electric, acoustic, and keyboard. Now, when I did Rent, the guy playing guitar 2 was terrible on keys.
Okay.
And he'd tell you himself. I'm not talking out of school. So music director and conductor and I would put together a book where we just cut and pasted a book together to where I could grab a lot of the keyboard 2 stuff and still retain a lot of the guitar 1 stuff, which was the stuff that was pretty exposed, you know.
Mm. Okay, that's cool. So you were doing.
I played keys on Pippin. I played keyboard 2. I never played keyboard 1 because there's a good reason for that. and it starts with the letter S. and then I played on Pippin. I played electric, acoustic, banjo, mandolin, and keys.
Man,
you know, so
man,
I'm terrible on all those other things, by the way.
Yeah, you know, I'm doing sound because I was never a good drummer. No, I was okay. I was okay. I was one of those guys where my friends would say, yeah, we had Jeff on the gig. You know, he's a really nice guy.
Hey, let's hire Jeff. He's got a band.
Right. Yeah, Jeff's got a band. Let's get him.
Well, I can tell you what I really couldn't play. When I was a kid on the road, way back when, we talked about that before, I also played some brass and woodwind instruments, okay?
Really?
I played trumpet, valve trombone, not the slide. I had a slide, but I played the valve trombone because the fingerings are the same as the trumpet. It's just the register's different.
Right.
And tenor sax, alto sax, and flute. Played flute pretty well. I played the valve trombone okay, but not really at a good level at any of them, but good enough to play the horn parts from Knock on Wood and Soul Man and stuff like that.
Right. Well, you know, back in those days, a lot of those bands, when we were talking about being on the road in those clubs, they were show bands where, like, the Flippers had a thing where everybody played each other's instrument. You know, they'd switch around.
That was kind of it. Yeah, well, that's what we did.
A lot of guys do that. Okay. Oh, the guitar player is playing trumpet now. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I'll tell you what made me stop doing that. Okay. So I'm playing in this club. I'm like 21 years old, and I'm playing trumpet. And I'm playing. I think we're playing like, you know, that horn part on "Hold On, I'm Coming." You know, and everybody knows. And the horn part, da 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 da, right?
Yeah.
And I was playing it like a kid in 3rd grade marching band. You know. Who walks in and sits down right in front of me? Bill Chase.
No.
No. Bill Chase, Alan Ware, all 4 of those trumpet players sit down 10 feet from me. You know what my trumpet playing turned into? I mean, I was choking like somebody had a noose around my neck.
Oh my God.
Well, and there's a great adage that I have lived by ever since, and I've heard it, many very seasoned musicians say it since, including the great Tommy Tedesco, and that is, don't show people what you can't do.
Yeah, right. Just show them what
That's
you can
they'll
do.
remember about you.
Right.
You know, so I'm very careful what keyboard gigs I take because, honest to God, I'm not gonna, you know. I mean, no, I can play enough to where I nail what I have to do, but I'm not going to go out and tell Vladimir Horowitz, move over, I got this, you know?
Right. Well, Dale, we've been, you know, honestly, it feels like we've not been talking long, but we're up on an hour and 20 minutes.
Holy smokes, I've got about a half hour.
It really did, because you know, I mean, so much of the stuff we were talking about, or I can relate to, and wanted to hear all the stuff about LA, and we didn't even get into some of the really crazy stuff.
Oh no, I've got the horror stories, and I got a couple great stories about the greatest session musician that ever lived in LA. Well, Tommy Tedesco, the great Tommy Tedesco guitar player.
Let's hear it.
It takes a few minutes.
It's good, and then that'll be a good one to close the show.
1988. CBS is going to re-record all the music from the TV show Bonanza.
Oh boy.
And Tommy Tedesco was one of the 6 original guitar players. They used 6 guitar players on the original scoring date, because back then they recorded everything on Magstripe. They didn't have multi-track the way they did it just a few years after that. So they had to record everybody together. So they had 6 guitar players. Well, now in 1988 they had multi-track, and they only needed 2 guitar players. And the only guy that was still around that was the original bunch happened to be the most prestigious studio musician in Hollywood, Tommy Tedesco, on guitar. You may ask, why did they call me? Well, because I was the favorite son of this music supervisor over there on this particular project, and I had been working for him for years, so I just got the call just because I was his guy, not because I was anywhere near Tommy Tedesco's lead. Okay? Now, you have to understand, this was a monumentous thing, so a lot of CBS execs were there, a lot of public relations people, they're all crowding into the control room. And another thing about Tommy, if Tommy liked you, you had a career. You know, Tommy put out a good word. Tommy didn't like you, move. Okay. All right, so we get there. They've got the orchestra already cut. We're going to overdub all the guitar parts that everybody remembers. You know, so it's three grown men that live with their dad, Bonanza. You know, all those guitar parts.
Right.
You know, all the galloping guitars, real twangy. Well, so this other fellow that is working for them, not my direct boss, but another guy that seems to be involved in this somehow, says, all right, guys, I want you to get out your Fender Telecasters for guitars 1 and 2 on the main title music, which is the theme music. You know, Fender Telecaster, you know what those are, right?
Yeah, yeah. Right, yeah.
Because that's what evidently they used way back when, 1959. Tommy hasn't had his Telecaster out of his cartridge case since about 1959. Okay. It's got Carol Case and Hal Blaine and all of them, you know, they have all written their names on this guitar in Carol Case fingernail polish. Okay, the strings are brown with rust. It's horrible. But Tommy was always one of those guys, whatever you say. He gets this thing, it won't tune up. It's buzzing like a chainsaw. And you know, it's just.
Yeah.
So, but nobody wants to bust Tommy because Tommy could get up in your face pretty hard. And I saw him do it a couple times. So the music supervisor goes, Daryl, would you please come into the control room? So I go in there and I go, what? He goes, go out there and tell Tommy that he's out of tune and his rig sounds bad. Oh, I can't do that. My career is over. I go out there and do that. So I go out there and I got my guitar, you know, and I sit down and I'm like this. I'm hanging my head. I'm sweat, you know, is coming out of my eyes. And Tommy says, what's going on? And I lied. I said, oh, they got to repatch some stuff in there. We got a couple minutes. And I said, Tommy, did you ever see this guitar I play, this particular Telecaster? He says, yeah, I've seen it. I said, check this out. I hand him my guitar. He goes, this plays great. I go, well, try it. He goes, sure. And I didn't have another one with me like that. But Donnie Oldfield had his cartridge case in the studio too. So I went over to Donnie Oldfield's case looking for another Telecaster. He didn't have one either, but he had what's called a Mosrite guitar, Ventures type guitar. So I got it out of his case. I brought it over, we sit down. So we played that whole section with Tommy playing my guitar. Wow. Problem solved, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We go to lunch. I figure I've dodged the bullet. At lunch, Tommy has like 5 pastrami sandwiches this big from Astro Burger. You know, it is. Anyway, we come back, and now we're going to do all the acoustic guitar parts. That it's all the galloping stuff, right?
Right.
Now, first of all, Tommy is the best sight-reading musician alive. He can read anything, and all of those rhythms were articulated. They're all written out, and I'm playing. Tommy's just flogging away like he's a drunk at a campfire. You know, like just, and I'm sitting there thinking, it's not that this guy can't read. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, same thing. Daryl, would you please come into the control room? I go, what do you want now? He says, tell Tommy to get on his part. Oh, this guy's a million times better. I can't do that. So I go out there and I sit down and I'm like, I'm hanging. I don't know what to say to the man. Tommy reaches over this elbow, elbows me like this. He starts laughing. This big guy elbows me like this. He goes, they want me to get on my part, don't they? And he was just screwing around with him. And in the meantime, I've lost like 60 pounds in 3 hours over the session over this stuff, you know?
That's funny. He was just fucking with him.
Just was. Oh, he's the guy that would love to play the nylon string guitar with a pick. And they'd say, Tommy, would you please play play a Fender guitar, and you know we had these gobos out there, so where you couldn't always see the musicians because we'd be behind these you know gobos things that would block off the sound. Tommy would hold up his Telecaster or his Stratocaster like this, set it down, and then pick up the classical guitar again, and they would always go, "That's great, Tommy, thanks." Now I thought this was a myth until I saw it happen.
Wow.
I watched it one time. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it said, give us a 12 string. You know, the 12 string, put it back down behind the barrier, pick up the nylon string again.
Wow.
Thanks, Tommy. Cool. And I thought it was complete BS until I saw it.
And the control room guys just didn't know any different.
Nobody wanted to mess with him.
Oh.
I saw him shake a couple of conductors down real bad because, you know, I mean, if Tommy said this guy is not right, it was history. Hey, next time we talk, I will tell you about some of my horror stories and some monumental failures.
Yeah. Well, these have been great. These were all great stories. So I want to play out with some Little Anthony stuff. Is there something that I should play from Little Anthony?
If you go to YouTube, you might go to Heard It Through the Grapevine. You know, it's a cover that Anthony does, and it smokes. It really smokes. It's a pretty burning arrangement.
Okay.
And you go to that, or you could go to. That would probably be about the best one because it's pretty high energy.
Okay. I'm doing that right now as I speak. There it is. I'm going to pull it up, and then I'll close out the show with that song. And Dale, man, it's been so fun catching up with you. We've talked a little bit. And the first time we met, we were talking. It was always great because we had so many good stories, and I always love hearing all the stories, especially about.
Well, the best thing about it is you can't make this stuff up.
Right.
It all happened.
It really did happen. It's really it's the real deal.
There's a lot of stuff because of good taste we can't talk about.
Right. Yeah, there's some really good Igor stories. You know, there's some really good Igor stories, man. I'm telling you, that guy. All right, so I'm going to play. Is this a live Heard It Through the Grapevine? This is
probably yeah, because they don't have it on a record, so it's probably from a concert.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of different versions of this that we've done that people have YouTubed and put on over the years.
Okay, so let me see. I just want to make sure I'm going to mention this, which one it is. This one is. Oh no, I don't want that one. That one's too. I had one. You know, there it is. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and that's you. That's you playing guitar on it. Ow!
All right.
Okay, so let's play that one, and I'll take it out. Thank you, Dale.
My pleasure. Anytime. Best of luck to you out there, and I hope we get out that way to play with you guys again.
Yes, I would love that. Thanks, Dale.
Okay. Don't be strangers.
All right.